Hi, and welcome to the Experiment Podcast. I'm your host, Jade Theriault. This is a space, a container where we give soul to practical and logical concepts, and we give feet and legs to the magical, the mystical, the spiritual, and the woo-woo. This is a space where we experiment with life and personal development and truly step deeper into the highest, most aligned version of ourselves. This podcast is a way for me to document and share the process that I am actively experimenting in my own life, the hypotheses that I am questioning and having, and me testing out those theories and letting you know and sharing with you the results. I tried to record this episode many times yesterday. I sat in front of the camera and I pressed record, and I was sharing, and every single time I attempted to record, I was interrupted, or I kept feeling this internal block that I wasn't totally sure what it was. And so, as I do, I took a step back from recording and I gave myself space and grace to try to do something else. I'm a really productive person. I get a lot of fulfillment out of doing and accomplishing tasks. And so I didn't want to do nothing. But I quickly became aware of myself yesterday and this feeling inside of me. And for instance, I tried sitting in front of my computer and just doing a little bit of extra work for my job. I tried going outside. The weather here in Louisiana has been yucky. It has been rainy and windy and gross. And I have a beautiful rose bush that is growing so amazingly. And it is on its side right now. And so I need to stake it up and better support it. And so I went outside to go and maybe do that and just shake things up a little bit. And literally just couldn't. I could not take any action. And I kept noticing this urge in me to pick up my phone and just scroll on Instagram, check my Facebook, scroll on TikTok. And I did it a couple of times, but every time I did, I was aware of what I was doing, and I had to mindfully force myself to stop. And I was like, okay, let's try something else, because I was in a place of knowing that there is so much for me to do right now, for the podcast, for my job, around my house. And I sometimes get really uncomfortable with not being productive and accomplishing tasks. So I was like, okay, let's try to do something else. So I got my camera and I really wanted to record a video of myself to share as a reel with you guys on Instagram and TikTok and all the things, because I am trying to create more content. And I sat in my kitchen. I have a little bay window, and it's just one of my favorite places to kind of meditate and just sit in my house. And I wanted to record a video of me explaining how I regulate my nervous system, because I started to realize that it seemed like I was in a functional freeze state with my nervous system. And typically what I do for that is I do some breathing exercises and some EFT tapping and some gentle movements. And I was like, okay, maybe I will just try to record a video and share real time what it's like to regulate, or first become aware that you're in a, dysregulated state, and then take action and steps to regulate yourself, regulate myself. And I sat down on the bay window, and again, I recorded this video about 4 times. And every time I did, it was just the words came out wrong, and I just didn't feel good about it. And I just kept feeling myself getting more and more frustrated by it. And it just didn't feel good to be doing. And so I became aware of that and I stopped myself. And again, I feel all this pressure around creating social media content, but I'm also very aware of my nervous system and my body and my needs. And I'm just trying to release the pressure and trust that and trust in whatever my body's needs are. And so I put the pressure to perform, to create, to do down. And of course, in this moment too, I was met with some anger and some frustration that everything I kept trying to do was being blocked by the universe and by myself. And I started sobbing. It just, tears welled up and they started flooding my eyeballs, flooding my cheeks, flooding my house, figuratively, not literally. But I felt this rush of emotions. And this whole moment was so cool for me because I was so aware of it. I was so aware of the overwhelm. I was so aware of the frustration. I was so aware of the anger with the universe and with myself for really feeling like I belong on this path, but being met with obstacle after obstacle after obstacle. And I just laid there on the bay window and I just cried and sobbed and did not force myself to fix it. And I let it out. And it shifted everything in me yesterday. And I gave myself all the time that I needed. And I hand on heart, I belly breathed, I did all of the things. And I affirmed safety in my body. And this morning when I woke up, I was in a completely different state. Yesterday, when I tried to record this episode, I wanted to talk about slowing down and trusting your intuition and the importance of, not always having to do and be productive. I really felt that in my heart and soul and body, and I do to some level. We'll cover that today. But yesterday afternoon, after all of this awareness and this regulation that I did with myself, I realized that my question for this episode and my experiment here is, was I yesterday experiencing resistance from doing and creating, or was I actually in a functional freeze nervous system activation state? And after going through an exercise with myself and digging into this deeper, I do believe I was in a functional freeze state because of the pull to numb, to disconnect, and every single thing I tried to do, I could not take action on. Even the smallest, simplest things, I just couldn't. I just wanted to scroll and rot. But it got me thinking about how it's so important to build awareness around our stuckness and then determining, is it resistance or are we in a functional freeze or just freeze nervous system activation state? I want to start off by saying that if you are feeling stuck, whether it's resistance or whether it is nervous system activation, you are not a problem. You are not broken. You are not failing. There is nothing wrong with you. Our systems, whether it is our brain with the resistance or our physiological state and being with our nervous system, Both of these things, our brain and our nervous system, is just trying to protect us in some way. And that is why it's responding with stuckness, either resistance or freeze. But I want to just like make that part so clear that there is nothing wrong with you. Let's first talk about resistance. Resistance is a psychological block. A psychological block typically rooted in fear, doubt, perfectionism, or discomfort. With resistance, we typically can act, we just aren't. There's sometimes, most times, this like emotional avoidance that is blocking us, stopping us, or keeping us stuck. Now, functional freeze presents quite similarly, but it is very different. And functional freeze, or a freeze nervous system state, is a physiological response. It's part of the autonomic nervous system's defense response. When fight or flight aren't available, our bodies might shift to freeze or a dorsal vagal shutdown. This is because our bodies are overwhelmed and we feel like we don't have any more energy, and our bodies are trying to conserve the energy we have. Our body in this state believes that it's not safe to act, so energy must be conserved. Resistance and freeze state present so similarly on the surface. They both look like just no action, but they have to be treated and navigated in complete opposite ways. I want to talk about the science behind the functional freeze state. Your nervous system runs without your conscious control like a surveillance system. It's constantly scanning your environment, the people around you, everything, scanning for threats or danger. And danger can be anything unfamiliar, anything out of the known and comfort zone. Even if something is safe, if it is unfamiliar to us, it might seem unsafe to our nervous systems. The polyvagal theory helps explain this and breaks it down in a way that's a bit more digestible and easy for us to understand. They have the ventral vagal state, which means we are feeling safe, engaged, connected. Then there's the sympathetic state, which is typically fight or flight, and it's urgency and panic. And then we have freeze or dorsal vagal shutdown, which looks like collapse, shutdown, or numbness. Freeze happens when the system says, I cannot fight, I cannot flee, so I'm just going to shut down instead. It's like a deer in headlights. Everything's coming at you and your body just responds by stopping, and it physically cannot take any action. Resistance is the ego resisting change or expansion, whereas freeze is the soul asking for safety before anything new or any truth can land. Resistance protects the comfort zone. Freeze state and nervous system responses are just trying to protect you. There's a different texture to them, and we can see that one is truly for our highest good and for our safety. Sometimes it's a little misled and it's a little overprotective and a little hypervigilant, and we can work with that through awareness and through nervous system work. The other is truly a block, standing in our way from stepping deeper into ourselves and into our highest potential. If you find yourself in a state of no action, there are 4 questions that I ask myself that you can use to check in and ask yourself. The first question is, if someone were to gently help me, would I feel energized or still shut down? If you would feel energized with someone's help, you're probably struggling with resistance. Now, if even the thought of someone helping you do these things, even with that thought, you feel disconnected or numb or heavy, that's probably indicating you are in a freeze state. The second question is your inner voice saying, I should, or I literally can't? If your inner voice is saying, I should, it's probably resistance. If your inner voice is saying, I can't, that's freeze. The third question, can I focus on anything else right now? Having a conversation with someone, doing another task, cleaning. If the answer is yes, resistance. If the answer is no, freeze. And 4, what does my body do? How does my body respond when I even think about starting this task? If it's tight or feeling avoidant or restless, resistance. But if it's numb or foggy or low in energy, that's freeze. If you're in a freeze state, your body and your nervous system need regulation, not more energy or motivation. The way we can do this is by focusing and trying to re-engage our ventral vagal state. We can re-engage and tap into the ventral vagal state doing a few different things. The first being rhythmic movement. That might look like swaying or rolling our shoulders or light stretching. Another way is through warmth, sunlight, or drinking something hot. Another might be through vocal tone, like humming or singing or just music. Or eye contact, sitting with someone else, making eye contact and co-regulating together. And a good breathing exercise to do with this would be slower breaths with longer exhales. And I would recommend doing this until you feel a physiological shift in your body and mind. Small little actions like this, stacked on top of each other until we feel a shift. Now, if it's resistance and not dysregulation, we need the opposite approach. We don't need regulation, we need momentum. Resistance is a fear of doing it wrong, not a lack of energy. A few ways we can combat resistance and overcome it are by setting a 5-minute timer and doing what you can in 5 minutes and then restarting that timer and then restarting that timer. Another thing is, which is my favorite thing and my favorite way to get out of resistance with doing anything or procrastination, and that is by shrinking a task into the most micro task possible. And I do this over and over and over again, and slowly the productivity, the micro productivity builds up, and then you've completed the task. We can also use a body cue like standing up and saying, I am going to move toward this now. Another thing is just affirming that you can do this, even afraid, even with doubt, even with discomfort. Resistance starts to crack apart the moment you decide consciously to start and to do without feeling totally ready. I wanted to stress this in this episode because resistance and functional freeze or freeze present so similarly that sometimes we might confuse them in our bodies and in our minds. But if we meet resistance using tactics to shift out of functional freeze, we end up over-coddling fear. Or if we treat the freeze as if we're actually in resistance, there's a potential that we could further traumatize ourselves or push ourselves deeper into a dysregulated state. Misdiagnosing ourselves keeps us stuck, which is why awareness and knowing ourselves and our bodies and the sensations in our bodies is so important. Also, with awareness, whenever we learn to correctly name the state that we're in, it's empowering, and it builds the relationship with ourselves. It builds trust within ourselves. This is all steps toward self-leadership, not self-judgment. Whether you are in resistance or in a free state, neither is wrong, neither is better than the other. It's just all about learning what that looks like for you and getting yourself back into either a regulated state or pushing through the barriers that are keeping you from stepping deeper into yourself and into the potential of your life. I want to leave this episode by saying that you are not broken. You just are human, and that's okay. Resistance asks for courage. Freeze asks for care. The more you experiment and work with your system, the faster you move through resistance, or the faster you are able to regulate yourself when you are in a state of dysregulation, no matter what that looks like, whether that's fight, flight, or freeze. Thank you so much for showing up today. I'm really proud of myself for showing up and for knocking this episode out. This feels like one I'm going to probably come back to and keep experimenting with, but I feel so good about the relevance of it. I don't know, it feels so tangible and applicable, and I like that. It makes me feel nerdy. Anyway, I hope you have a fantastic day and you take care of yourself and you take care of your nervous system and you stay courageous. Also want to give you a little update about the social experiment. I have been looking for a space that we could host the social experiment, and I think I found one. So I'm going to go peek at it either tomorrow or just this coming weekend, whenever I have time. And we are going to start really maybe setting a date and getting deeper into the process of the social experiment. So stay tuned. Follow the Instagram account at experimentpodwithjade. Same thing on YouTube. And I'll see you guys on the other side. I love you.